Hi guys, this is Stu from Mobile Geeks, and today we're going to bring you a comparison video of the new Xperia Z3 Compact from Sony compared with the HTC One Mini 2. Now, of course, these are both devices that are largely based on their bigger brothers, the flagships from their respective companies. But as we've seen in the past, quite often the specs get toned down a little bit, and just because it's smaller, it does kind of often feels that you're losing a lot of that flagship sheen. Now, if we just, first of all, let's look at the two screens side by side. Okay, over here in the Sony, we have a 4.6-inch 1280 by 720 IPS LCD screen, which uses Sony's Triluminous technology. This is actually, we reviewed this guy just like last week, and I have to tell you, this really is one of the best screens we've ever seen. Now, over here we have a slightly different kind of technology. This is Super LCD 2, which HTC have been using for the last few generations, and it's actually slightly smaller. This is 4.6, over here you get them 4.5. But it's the same resolution, it's the same 720p. Because this is slightly smaller on the HTC, you're getting a slightly higher pixel per inch, but actually, I think in terms of pixels per inch, there's not a great deal of difference. One area where we were quite impressed, especially with the Sony over here, was just the sheer brightness levels that you're getting. So if I just go into here and we click on brightness, and we can whack that up right to the top, you can see immediately my camera's reacting to this because it is shockingly bright. I mean, we've shown you this before, and it's actually, well, it's just that impressive. I don't mind showing it to you again. Okay, so let's see what we got on the HTC here. Let's just go into, to have the full access to that, we need to go into settings. We can look at brightness, and we'll turn this right up. Let's go all the way up to the top. Okay, so you can see that actually HTC is competing quite well with Sony, I think, here. Both of these displays are quite bright, but I am going to give the edge to Sony here. Viewing angles are fantastic on both of these devices. Also, the colors, again, I think Sony has the edge when it comes to it's the way the pixels handle the colors with this Triluminous technology. But side by side, I don't think there's really too much in it. Probably we have to give it to Sony, though, if I'm being perfectly honest, because, well, they're making some of the best panels we've ever seen. In terms of them both being 720p, it's not a problem for me. Yeah, you can turn your nose up and thinking, come on, I want full HD or even QHD. But for a device this size, 720p seems to work absolutely fine. So in terms of processor performance, let's just have a quick look in here. You'll find that we have the actual processor information. It's a Qualcomm 8974 Pro AC, which is otherwise known as the Qualcomm Snapdragon 801. Now, the 801 was until recently the real top dog, the best performing mobile processor on the market. So it's not surprising to see that here's all our benchmarks that we've been running. It's not surprising at all to see that when we took a few screenshots here, this is a great score in 3D mark, but if we can just find, where is Geekbench? Ah, okay, Geekbench. Let's compare this. That's almost 1,000 points for the single core and over 2,600 points for the multi-core score. So we'll just leave that there for a second. Now here in the HTC One Mini 2, you also get a system on chip from Qualcomm, but it's not quite the same version as we've seen. Oh, we don't have information there. It's actually the Snapdragon 400, which is clocked at 1.2 gigahertz compared to the 2.5 gigahertz here on the Sony, which is quite different. They're both quad-core, but there is a big difference in performance. We just go to gallery. You can see that actually, let's bring this back up. You can see there's a significant difference in the scoring here. It's kind of less than half. So Sony's definitely got a better performing system on chip or mobile processor, if you will. One other thing to note here is that the HTC One Mini 2 is only getting 1 gigabyte of RAM. I think this also affects performance, especially when you're switching between apps, especially heavier apps like your browser or 3D games, and certainly even your camera app at times, especially if you have filters running, things like that. Definitely, the extra 2 gigs helps, and that's what we've got here on the Sony. You're getting 2 gigabytes of RAM, which is always great to see. Now, of course, in terms of design, I'm gonna reach for the HTC first here, because I think HTC really, when they first came out with the M7, they were knocking it out the park, weren't they? I mean, the M7, I don't have it on hand right here, but it was a similar kind of build, and I think with the M8, they took the idea, the concept of this unibody aluminium chassis one step further. So it's curved, it's beautifully curved. This is, of course, not the M8, this is the smaller version, but to all intents and purposes, it's very, very similar. You got two separate pieces here at the end, which is different from the true M8, but it has that same in-hand feel, it has the same solid build, and it's something which we've been impressed with. And you can check out our review of this phone. We were very, very happy with the build quality of it. Now over here with Sony, Sony also doing very well in terms of build quality. Now what we've seen on a lot of other devices is Gorilla Glass on the back as well as the front, and here we don't have that. This is actually plastic. But we do get some tempered glass on the front, which means it's pretty much scratch proof and very, very durable. Now other features in terms of design, we've got like a plastic edge around here, which is different from the Z3, which had a kind of chrome edge. But this does feel slightly rubbery, and it feels good in the hand, and it won't be slippery. I guess this is to aid with grip. That's part of the reason why they chose that material. But overall, it's a very, very sexy, very sleek, and it's actually quite thin device as well. This is, in terms of thinness, this is 8.6 millimeters. Now compare that to the HTC here. The HTC is 10.6 millimeters, which is a significant difference. But to be fair to HTC, when we're talking about the thickness of the device, hello, focus, we're talking about the thickness of the device kind of to the middle, to the center of the device right here. So that's maybe a little bit unfair. It's certainly thinner around these edges here. Also, in terms of length, let's compare the length. The HTC is exactly 1 centimeter longer, and also a couple of grams heavier. This is 137 grams right here, whereas on the Sony we've got 129 grams. So a little bit of difference in weight, but not too much. One other advantage of the Sony is that it's IP68 certified, so your micro SD and SIM slots are covered here by a flap, and the whole thing is waterproof up to 1 meter for as long as 30 minutes. So good for a quick swim, and also good if you're prone to dropping phones down the toilet and into sinks and things like that. You know who I'm talking about, Nicole. Anyway, okay. So I think in terms of build quality, these are two of the most impressive phones on the market. HTC and Sony are way ahead, in my opinion, of Samsung. It's only really when you come to devices, I think like possibly Huawei with the recent Ascend Mate 7, and also, who else is there? Of course, there's OnePlus. The OnePlus looks absolutely fantastic. So I think these are, but nevertheless, these are two of the best made and well-designed, solid phones that you'll get. So I don't know, it's a pretty close call for me. I find it difficult really to make that call. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Sony's giving you 2 gigabytes of RAM, and HTC's giving you only the 1 gigabyte of RAM. But in terms of internal storage, they're both on an equal par. We have 16 gigabytes of storage on both of these. And the great news is that they both support micro SD cards. The micro SD card on the HTC One Mini 2 just pops right in there, and you also have, under this flap here, access to a micro SD card slot. In terms of cameras, let's have a look now. Actually, on the front here, HTC can claim a win because they have a 5 megapixel camera. But HTC are using different technology to Sony. They don't own their own proprietary technology. So whether or not this camera, I mean, you know, you can believe in megapixels all you want, but I'm sure that in terms of the selfie cam here, it will be a fairly close run thing. Over here you're getting, so that's 5 megapixels compared to 2.2 megapixels on the Sony. But hey, come on, who cares about selfie cams? I'm not that bothered. Let's look at the real thing on the back here. So on the back you're getting a, let me see, 13 megapixel right here in the HTC. And that's compared to a 20.7 megapixel here on the Sony. But it's not just this, that's not just where Sony shines. Sony is doing very well there because it's got a 1 by 2.3 inch sensor, whereas over here we got 1 by 3, which means you're getting more light inside. It's a larger sensor, you're getting more light, so it's not just about megapixels. Now, if I'm being honest, this camera is exactly the same, or even, Nicole says even better than the one she experienced on the Xperia Z3. You have to give the camera to Sony here. I'm sorry, HTC, you're good, but you just do not have the fantastic proprietary technology that Sony has on offer with its Exmor RS range of sensors. Okay, if you want to check out the difference in the photos, we've reviewed both of these, so just head on over to mobilegeeks.com and you can see plenty of example photos there and you can compare them for yourself. Now, in terms of battery, of course, battery life is essential to any good smartphone. So inside the HTC One Mini 2, we're getting a 2110 milliamp hour battery, which you cannot remove. You cannot get into the back here. That, of course, is one of the drawbacks of a unibody design. Yeah, you can't get in here. So, how does it do? Well, we found it to be a very reasonable performer, and you're going to get all day, no problem. Probably a day and a half or even 2 days if you're a relatively light user. But can it compare to Sony? Sony's always done well with battery life in my experience. I've always been impressed. And what you're getting here is a 2600 milliamp hour battery, which, believe it or not, we ran the laptop magazine test on this guy, and it lasted for 16.5 hours, which is, I think, the highest score we've ever seen. So, definitely Sony is winning in terms of the battery sakes. The battery life on the Z3 Compact is just as good as you're going to find on any Android smartphone. There you go. It's pretty definitive for you right there. But in terms of software, we've got, well, I wouldn't say two very different approaches. One thing that's immediately apparent to me is that even though they're both 720p, the icons on HTC do tend to, I mean, let's just check out this app drawer here. How many apps are you getting per screen, and how big are these little icons? It seems to me that Sony's icons are a little larger, a little fuller, and they're using the space better. And one slightly annoying quirk for me is it goes down. Why are you going down? Can't we go up? Yes, we can go up. But can't we go from side to side, I mean? Okay, oh, we can change grid size. We can. 3x4. Oh, that's even worse. No, I prefer the layout here. The icons are slightly larger on the Sony. Both devices have the one finger and the two finger thing. So one finger will take you to notifications, and two fingers will take you to all your shortcuts for your settings. As you can see, you're getting the same on the Sony. Oh, I mucked it up. There you go. Oh, this screen's just so sensitive. So there you go. Overall, just look at the setting panel on both of these. You can see that the Sony is pretty much plain old Android. They're not doing a great deal with it. This is, apart from they've changed some of the icons and the coloring, but generally the layout and everything is very, very similar to vanilla Android. On the HTC, we've got a completely different font, and they've toned down the colors. It's much more mono. Turn on Bluetooth. Bluetooth, turning on. So now you can see that that's actually turned green. I think we turn mobile data on, does the same. So that's actually quite cool. I think that's an intelligent way of using color, maybe more intelligent way of using color than what you have here on Mr. Sony. But having said that, I mean, Sony's UI is good. I just think it looks, if I'm being honest, it looks a little dated. Some of these icons that they're using are not what I would be using. I think maybe HTC, they're staying with it, when it comes to icon design, at least they're staying much closer. I mean, gallery settings and calculated calendar, you can see they're staying very much closer to vanilla Android. Now, of course, one area where certain manufacturers have tended to overdo it is kind of pushing their own software and services on customers. And with Sony, we have what's new, and it's, well, we've already taken care of it. It's already gone, but it was quite annoying, and it's just a way of Sony trying to suck you into the content ecosystem. You also have here Walkman, album, movies, and PlayStation. The PlayStation app, of course, is great. If you have a PlayStation 4, you can enjoy that. But I think you know, I think I prefer the simpler versions that you're getting on HTC for a lot of this. And HTC should be given credit because they are kind of sticking a lot more to a vanilla Android experience, and I think that's one which people generally enjoy. So I'm probably just going to edge HTC Sense UI on this one. It's version 6 of Sense, and they're doing a very good job. And a way I've saved the best to last, and I think this is because the Sony Z3 Compact is a fantastic phone, but one area where we really need to see this head-to-head is, can it compete when it comes to audio? So we have our MP3 loaded here. Let's just play it now. Right, so actually it's an awesome audio experience, and you've got 2 speakers either side, and it's stereo. What do we have on HTC? Well, we have Beats Audio. So let's just do a little quick comparison. Where's our audio app player? I don't see it. Where are you? Ah, here we go. That's better than Sony. Let's just do a side-by-side comparison again. Okay, this is interesting. I would say that HTC probably doesn't win in terms of volume. In terms of overall volume, it's good, it's impressive, but it's not gonna beat the Sony. I don't know, pretty similar. But the thing that strikes me is HTC's got much more bass. It's actually a much fuller sound. I'm not sure if you're getting this. Did you hear that bass? What happened to the bass? Is he taking a break? I mean, I don't know. It's disappeared. That's just phenomenal. To get any bass of that clarity on a device of this size on a goddamn smartphone, it's just so impressive. So yeah, in terms of audio, Beats Audio still wins. Sony are doing well. It's nice and loud, but it doesn't have the bass. And in my mind, it doesn't have the clarity either. It's slightly distorted. Now, if we move on to price, what we see is that the Z3 Compact here is going to cost you around just over a snip over $500. We just checked on Amazon, and it looks like you can get this now for $530 US via Amazon. Now, we realize that this isn't a flagship, strictly speaking, on the One Mini 2, simply because the CPU is of a lower quality. The display is similar, the camera is not, unfortunately, and you're getting less RAM as well. So I think this is definitely a smartphone with its corners cut, and that is reflected in the price, thankfully, because it's a bit cheaper. It's $450 right now, this guy. So $450 versus $530, that's an $80 difference. That's a significant difference. But what Sony are going for here is definitely, they've tried to make the best smartphone that they could in this form factor, using the best materials, so credit to them. HTC have cut a few corners because, well, it's a smaller device than the One M8. Should people really expect to pay the same price? And if it's going to be cheaper, then maybe they needed to cut corners there. Anyway, I think overall it's a tough one for me because I am a huge fan of the HTC One Mini 2 and the HTC One series in general. I'm also a huge fan of Sony and their Xperia stuff. I don't know, folks. I'm going to leave this one up to you. Let me know in the comments, and if you like this stuff, do not forget to subscribe. Okay, cheers. This is Stu from Wild Geeks comparing the Sony Z3 Compact with the HTC One Mini 2. Bye-bye.